Play your own type of chess.
Yeah, and Dubov, did open with his queen's pawn. Magnus Carlsen replying as well with his queen's pawn. This opening I haven't seen for years, and especially not at the top level. Magnus Carlsen is challenging everything in the centre there.
Well, they used to look very friendly, those 4 pawns in the centre there. Now they're only 2.
I know. They're going to be friendly off the board. Those 2 remaining pawns are about to disappear as well any moment. First, start choosing the best squares for his pieces first. And there we see the knight captures the pawn in the centre. Magnus Carlsen does decide to take with the queen. Was this what happened in the previous game?
No. They took with the knight.
Okay, so black has moved the queen a couple of times. This is not what we recommend. Wow, Daniel Dubov now sacrificing a pawn. Shock horror. We didn't see that one coming, did we? Well, at least take a pawn and say, OK, prove your compensation. Love to ask him.
He doesn't take it.
He doesn't take that pawn. He just moves his bishop instead. That's the type of move which is solid, but it's not going to scare Dubov too much. Okay. I think defending that pawn is the last thing on his mind. He's probably trying to find a way to continue the momentum, develop the pieces quickly and attack. OK, he moves a bishop. I was maybe expecting a different move. I was expecting white's knight in the centre to drop back and kick away the black queen. But this one makes sense.
You want me to go forward? Of course I'm going to go forward with my knight. And, OK, so Magnus goes for a completely different approach. He decides, do I do some trades?
Yeah, I mean, for example, you could jump forward and, threaten a deadly check on this square. Both of the knights heading towards this square. Actually, Daniel Dubov, he does a similar version of this. I think black here would just have to bring his rook across and guard this square. You can't allow a check. OK, Magnus Carlsen finds an alternative. We mentioned in a previous line that square that the knight wanted to jump into, the white knight, that needed to be covered. So rather than drop the black queen back first, Magnus defends it with the rook. Sooner or later, it probably has to be done. As part of a bigger plan, but he proves the rook first.
Definitely. Yeah, I didn't expect that. I thought if I was going to make an improving move, it would be get the king to safety. It's what we're traditionally taught.
Yeah, it's what we're taught for a reason as well. So.
And do nothing. Actually, I was going to suggest moving the pawn 1 square forward. And, OK.
To move the pawn just 1 square forward is because now white's bishop jumps out. It is eyeing up now a very weak pawn, the f7 pawn. And in all chess openings, that tends to be a bit of a weakness. It's only defended by the opponent's king. So white's bishop now perfectly placed, very actively placed. I really like that move by Dubov.
And jump into the centre. And it's also slightly worrying that the clock's times. It's a big difference. Dubov has just over 10 minutes. Magnus Carlsen just under 4 minutes on the clock.
And that would at least give some options. There we go. White's knight jumping in. The black queen was attacked by a bishop. It had to retreat to its starting square, that queen. So that queen's gone on a bit of an adventure. It's kind of triangulated back around to where it started from. And Dubov, at least he's gained a bit of time. He's forced a retreat, and now he has a chance to make that decision again, what to do with that knight that was attacked, and he just brings it back. White's central knight on a very nice outpost. Now, the black knight on a very nice outpost as well.
And how do you think that Daniel is going to deal with that? I was going to ask you, do you think Daniel will find a way not to retreat? And there you go, he retreated his bishop.
He's winning with black.
Wow.
So clearly that hard work's paid off. I'm going to go back and do my research on that opening afterwards. But meanwhile, Magnus Carlsen, he trades off white's knight in the centre there.
So
you gain time by attacking a pawn.
Yes, OK, Dubov plays my suggestion as well. Bishop takes I get a thrill when they play my moves. And, OK, Magnus is not comfortable with that bishop on the board, but now has offered to exchange it. But it's now the time, finally, for Dubov to castle. And, yes, he has moved that king to safety. And now Magnus has a choice. Does he simply develop his dark square bishop, or does he initiate a set of trades?
I personally would try and develop the dark square bishop if possible, just because I would be terrified leaving my king in the centre. And there we go, Magnus, he brings his bishop out to probably its most active square. And now I expect to see Dubov unleash the white queen. There, sitting ready to attack.
And okay, not all the way, David. So it's now eyeing up the pawn that we call the G pawn. And OK, so Magnus has to deal with that threat. I mean, the most natural move is simply to castle, and yet Magnus has played
Finally.
that move. Yes.
It's only move 18.
Yeah, I know.
When he needs to be, and he tends to make the right decisions.
Yeah,
well
okay,
on the
and Dubov has played a very sneaky move. He's moved his king to the corner. He's tucked it away into safety, and the intention is very clear. He is planning to push forward a pawn, and Magnus played very instantly. He captured the bishop, and after knight takes bishop, now what does Magnus have up his sleeve? It is the challenge. Yeah.
Magnus going on the offensive now.
Perhaps Dubov gave him the idea with tucking his king into the corner.
Yeah, let's bring up the analysis board because there has been some action with this last move. And we did mention Dubov tucking his king away in the corner. That's because White wanted to push his pawn forward. But before that is allowed, Magnus pushes his own pawn forward, attacking the white queen. And note how this pawn cannot be captured because that pawn was needed in the middle of the board to protect the white knight. The white knight would suddenly fall. Black's essentially playing with an extra piece because his king is so good. But okay, he doesn't do this. Magnus now being greedy in the current position. He just played pawn takes pawn. Dubov sacrificing a pawn this time, not by choice. Magnus grabbing a pawn there. And actually, the more I look at it, the more I think Magnus, this is just a very good idea as well.
And while we're waiting for Dubov to make a decision, okay, he hasn't retreated the knight. Instead, he has taken the pawn.
Black can bring his rook down the board now and attack White's queen from the side. Magnus finds it. He's attacking the queen. If the queen moves, then the knight will fall behind it. So White only has one idea here. White has to sacrifice his queen, otherwise he's just lost. Everything falls here. Actually, White would win now after knight takes queen next move. He finds it. He finds queen takes knight.
Wow.
And we're about to head into this position. Instead, after rook takes rook, instead of playing queen takes rook, rook takes knight, defends the black queen. And we're headed to an endgame. Lots of trades, lots of exchanges here, and Magnus is in charge. What a bad king. That's not the type of king we want in an endgame.
Totally, and that is why Dubov has played pawn on. But I mean, he's forgotten. One of his pawns is under attack. He needed to defend it, and well, that's it. Magnus has snatched it off the board. But what's that all about?
David?
Yeah, we saw him shake his head, Dubov. We know he likes to sacrifice pawns, but I think he just blundered that one away. He just forgot that White doesn't have time now to use the white rook and go and attack the black bishop because White's bishop is under fire from the black rook. Magnus Carlsen, he's just won a pawn for free. And in the endgame, this should be a decisive advantage.
Yeah.
White's bishop has to move.
Yes, Dubov's favour, and that is that we haven't seen Magnus be necessarily that precise. We've seen him get amazing endgames, and he hasn't managed to win them. But, you know, this was looking really good. The weak, potentially weak black pawn, but Magnus doesn't.
Magnus just defends it.
Just defends it, and it doesn't.
Move.
Yeah, and great play. He defends it from the side, and he's not even worried about the bishop.
And there, Daniel Dubov is shaking his head.
Yeah, let's have a name, an opening named after me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
maybe it should be called Howler Coin for all the blunders I make.
Okay, well, there's been a move. Dubov has moved his king towards the action. And, well, there is a problem. It hasn't dealt with the weak pawn that's on the left. And Magnus playing very quickly. He decided to slide his rook one square to the left. He's just improving his position.
White's king actually can't bring itself towards the centre because Black's pawn in the middle stops it. So, okay, Dubov trying to occupy an open line with his rook, trying to go active. That's what you should do in an endgame. If the white rook manages to get into Black's half, then suddenly it's less easy for Carlsen would be to just, okay, he drops his bishop the whole way back. I was going to say the bishop might drop back to block the open line for the white rook, but okay, it drops back the whole way. And that bishop does stop White from giving check at the top of the board. Very sensible. White's rook can try and activate itself, but the black rook's just going to slide across and target White's lone ranger, that lone pawn on the left side. Looks like a matter of time
it was even tempting to do what you suggested and then just walk the two pawns, because the great thing, if you look at... Okay, so just take the move. Dubov now is trying to create some chaos on the right side, and he's advanced one of his pawns up the board. So the pawn is threatening to move one square forward.
And there we go. Magnus Carlsen blocks in the white rook. That is just sadistic. White's rook now completely locked in. White's king unable to join the action. White's
One
bishop.
thing that I'm so worried about is I'm just thinking that Magnus is simply going to once he's dealt with the threat on his pawn, he's simply going to improve his bishop, and then there's nothing to stop him from walking those 2 pawns and creating a queen.
Yeah, that queenside majority, those 2 pawns on the left, those are going to be the potential winners. But Magnus, he's not going to rush pushing them forward. First, he does activate the black king. Remember, those kings in endgames.
Yeah, no, this is a beautiful, beautiful strategy, because look at the way that he's moved his rook and his bishop. They've aligned to tie the white rook to the 2nd row. That rook cannot move, because once that rook moves, well, the black rook will drop down and start attacking some more pawns. And here comes the pawns. Oh dear. Yeah,
oh dear, those 2 pawns are going to be menacing in a couple of moves' time. And there's just no way to stop their advance. White pushing pawns on the other flank, but White's pawns, they're not going anywhere. They will never... White's pawns on the side, they're on the right side, they'll never beat Black's pawns. There's no way to create a pass pawn on that flank. So Magnus, he's just ignoring that, and rightly so. He pushes his own pawns. That's where his advantage lies. It's important in middle games and end games. Only push on the side where you're stronger. And right now, Magnus, he knows what side he's strongest on. He's perfectly placed his king, his rook, his bishop. Now is the moment to start pushing, and Magnus, he's looking super relaxed. This is also, the key thing is, this is also the type of position you can play quite easily with just 1.5 minutes on your clock. There's no real calculation to be done, and often most of your moves are automatic. We see a trade of pawns on that right side. That doesn't deter Magnus from his goal. That's not going to distract him. Now the black pawns, they're coming.
In the end, the icing on the cake was just advancing those 2 pawns.
Yeah, that's why he's such... I mean, that's why we praise his endgames so much, right? Because he's so good at finding those mini plans. It's all about step 1, complete that, then move on to step 2. Now, the final step is advancing those pawns. We have seen a trade of pawns on that flank. Now, White trying to use his rook as a blockader, but rooks are so bad at blockading. That's just a very temporary measure. Black's bishop will easily kick away the white rook. The white rook has stepped back preemptively. I expect to see the black king join the action, and black's king, bishop and rook together, they will slowly guide. They'll pick up that pawn, they'll say, we'll hold your hand. They'll guide it through to become a new queen at the right moment. And what's white's king doing? Nothing.
And it's totally hopeless.
Yeah, that black pawn on that left side, it is the start of the show, that B pawn.
No, it will be a very important victory for Magnus.
Yeah,
just
2nd in a row.
Yeah.
The vest.
And Dubov resigns. There's no way to deal with that pawn. Magnus Carlsen wins and ends the day. Well, he's on a roll. He's on a roll. Not ends the day yet, he's on a roll.